very much. Yes, and we are going to take an hour, and then we're going to do some sophisticated pattern detection to see whether there are any questions in the audience. Yeah, as David said, I'm very old, and my name is Magda. I've been in the sort of data science industry with technical background, have a couple of engineering degrees, mostly in media, so Telegraph was one of my early experiences, then been at BBC, New Statesman, a couple of other media companies. Then I went down the entrepreneurial way, which my first startup was successfully acquired by Future, a large publisher. My second startup, Flare Data, is now unfortunately winding down. But that means that I'm in a perfect position of a disappointed and angry AI entrepreneur to talk to these AI titans on the stage. They love it. They love me saying that. And today we want to really sort of go a little bit behind the buzzwords, behind the definitions, behind the terms that are constantly evolving and new terms are showing up and everything is sort of taken over by newer and newer thing happening within the industry. And typically the moment that something actually starts working, it's not longer AI, not to mention it's definitely not AGI. So today we're going to try to focus on some truths, some risks, some hopes to sort of establish on what kind of pathway we are and whether it's a good pathway or not. So that's today, and I'm super privileged to be joined at the stage with 4 of our panelists. Before I let everybody to introduce themselves, I just want to mention that in the spirit of transparency and honesty and also free conversation, all of our panelists are not representing their employers, they're representing their own opinions and vast experience that we have here on the stage. If I can ask for literally one sentence for each of you to introduce yourself and say hello to our audience. Vittorio, do you want to start?
Yeah, of course. First of all, before the panel, we unanimously asked Magda not to use the word titans. We just asked some people that work in the field, but Magda loves the word. I'm Vittorio. I am a senior product manager in Amazon AGI. So Amazon AGI is the organization that builds Amazon's models, and I specifically work in the part of Amazon AGI that makes sure that the models are grounded with information, with accurate and timely information. So, yeah.
Olga?
Hi, I'm Olga, and I spent close to 3 years trying to understand whether generative AI can add value, commercial value to the organization, and whether genuine ROI use cases do exist. And worked in FTSE 200 and then also with portfolio of scale-ups as well.
Bhavul?
Hey guys, thanks for having me, Magda, and for calling us all titans.
Titans!
I'm Bhavul. I'm a research engineer at Meta. I'm currently working on generative AI research in one of their super intelligence teams. But yeah, as Magda mentioned, primarily just going to talk about my own opinions here. Yeah, I'll pass on to Chiara.
Okay, hello, I'm Chiara, glad to be here, and I'm a senior researcher in Fujitsu Research of Europe. That is a big Japanese company, if someone of you know it. And I work mainly in security of AI in general.
And just, I'm going to stay with Chiara there, and to, as a sort of opening question, can you explain or maybe give a couple of examples of projects that you're currently working on, and what sort of technologies do you employ, and how do you define them? Are they AGI? Are they statistics? What sort of level of that range would you focus on?
Okay, I work mainly with agentic AI, that is a sort of LLM empowered by action. So it's an LLM that not only can reply to questions, but can also do action, like writing code in the sense that write all your file, use your computer, and so on. So I'm working in practically breaking this system and see the vulnerability in terms of security they can have to mitigate them. So what I define this is probably what agentic want to be is AGI, because the agent, the concept of the agent is like the superhuman. So I think it's close to probably what we could call AGI.
Would you say that the moment it becomes sort of AGI, you just won't be able to break it, or the opposite?
That's a good question.
That's a challenge, Chiara.
Yeah, maybe it can be the opposite, because the attacker in security, they're very smart and they could find, a way to break it also if it becomes truly AGI. And also, in this question, probably the AGI needs to understand things about, for example, copyright, blame, and so on, or don't maybe give some data, but somehow they don't understand somehow that maybe some data are proprietary. And so this is a good question. Maybe they can be so smart to understand, but
then you're trying to break.
I think the attacker will become smarter as well and will find a way to go around it. So I think the problem will stay.
Yeah, and if we were just sort of like one sentence to say, at what point, or what are the sort of typical cases where the systems break, where they actually, kind of fall down under your tests?
Let's say, for example, that you want to fool the agent to reveal you some training data. So you will try to, craft a prompt good enough to let the agent think that you are doing this for good, and he will reveal you training data. Maybe are proprietary of the company, and this is a breach in security.
Got you. Bhavul, do you want to talk about your project?
Yeah, so my work right now revolves around LLMs, which, let me just take a moment to maybe clear air around what's AI, what's ML, what's AGI,
Go for it.
at least in my head, right? So I see as, I think AI was a term that's been around the longest, so among all of these, and that's just anything that you perceive to be artificially intelligent, so has some showcase of intelligence. I think back when chess was being solved through things which are definitely not neural networks, definitely not LLMs, it was still considered AI. So you could have basic graph search algorithms which would be considered AI. ML becomes a subset of it, so machine learning, where you could have a bunch of modeling ways where you will let an algorithm learn over time with data, and that's machine learning in my head. Within machine learning, one of the ways to facilitate that is large language models, which has become more popular because I think they're getting more and more generalized. So my work revolves around large language models, particularly around also building agents that are long running and that can try to improve the underlying LLM. So essentially, in a way, thinking about self-improvement, applying it to not just improving LLM that's underlying the agent, but also thinking about how well it can tackle other ML problems that are out there. So,
and is the goal of that work to reach the sort of generalization level, general?
I think so. That's the vision that we keep in mind, that let's try to generalize. But it'll always, I think what I've seen, having been in the industry for a decade or so, is you always start with a narrow problem and you try to solve that first, and then you think about how do you generalize further, right? So it's something similar is being taken up, I think, in not just in my place, but every company that I know of, yeah.
Yeah, got you. Olga?
So the type of work that I've been involved and driving is taking business processes, looking at the end-to-end, trying to understand where the critical bottlenecks are, and then taking access to, via API, access to the models and trying to figure out whether you can build a wrapper that will solve this problem. That was the phase one. The phase two was then moving towards enterprise-level solutions or partnering up with some startups that have already built more sophisticated portfolio of products around the same problem. And then also driving enterprise-level adoption of AI technology. And there is an element of engineering and science, but there is also an element of psychology, which is massive. And I would be happy to share some interesting insights. So we also tried to, I have been from the get-go when ChatGPT came out and the media was going absolutely crazy around the future of economy and the jobs. And I think the narrative still stands a lot in a lot of the publications that skills are dead, jobs are dead, right? I mean, I'm simplifying a little bit, but it lacks nuance. That frustrated me a lot from the very beginning. So we partnered up, because we were driving the experimentation program, partnered up with both Harvard and Stanford research labs to try to answer the question of what the future of the skill set is. And we've just published the first study that came out last week.
Excellent. Vittorio?
Yeah, of course. So as I said, I work in the organization that makes sure that the models are grounded and have timely and accurate data. So I would categorize that as LLM infrastructure. Mm-hmm. There is a bit of data infrastructure, obviously, to make sure that that our data systems are grounded with what is happening today and what happened in the last 5 minutes. There's a lot of data infrastructure that needs to happen there, and so mostly that's how I would categorize the line of work that I do.
And you're sort of focused. You mentioned that before in terms of the direction and infrastructure. The sort of what are the elements of the infrastructure that really need to be pushed and worked on in order to enable that progress of capability overall, like databases? Yeah,
well, I can speak outside of Amazon and outside of Alexa and Amazon AGI. Reliability is still an important problem in terms of the information retrieval. So, well, I mean, there's a bunch of different problems, not only reliability and the accuracy that a model decides to retrieve some type of information. Mm-hmm. There is latency, obviously, that is still very important. I'm not talking outside of Amazon, but in general, models still take a couple of seconds to come back with structured JSONs, for example. I'm not sure if maybe some of you have tried that out. It's become very easy to get text responses fast with streaming, but JSON objects still take a little bit longer. There is a cost level as well. There are some use cases that we were talking about before. Do we need AGI for some use cases? Mm-hmm. Mostly not. We do need some infrastructure improvements because cost can still go down and they can still unblock some use cases. For example, in voice agents, there's great use cases that can be unblocked if you use voice agents for heavy-duty work, like speaking 5 hours a day with a study tutor, for example. Yeah, we can come back to some of those elements. Yeah. Perfect. But I think what I heard here overall is that even if the progress in training, the sort of general training stopped today, something kind of completely blocked it, there is still a lot of work to be done and a lot of adoption to be done that can actually benefit the broader, sort of economy and society. However, we've seen the last week or two, MIT has released the new AI in business research when they said
95% of the Gen AI pilots are delivering no results. So there is some sort of challenges with adoption. The question is, are we, given what we've got currently, capability that is available from LLMs, are organizations and governments actually utilizing that to the maximum potential? Olga, I'm going to start with you because you had some good experience with the productivity side of things. Can you talk a little bit about the benefits that you were able to deliver?
Thank you. It's a fascinating question around adoption and productivity gains. So on one hand, you look at a particular use case. Firstly, before I go into any details, please raise your hand if you're at least weekly using one of the large language models. Okay, great. So we have the majority of believers. I wanted to say that you would relate very easily to the situation where you have a task, you apply your thinking to the task. It takes you, I don't know, say half an hour to an hour. Then you go like, let me try to solve this with LLM, and it takes you 10, 15 minutes max, right? And there are use cases like that in the business as well. And in the business, you will be looking at sometimes 20, 30% productivity gains, but sometimes crazy, like 1,000% productivity gains. And that should be, in theory, right, a no-brainer. You go and you say, like, let's implement it where the productivity gains are and reap the benefits. But what is massively underestimated is the fact that the task does not represent a fully designed process. So when you are starting to think about what does this task contribute to, you realize that there is the whole ecosystem of workflows, right? Use the task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4. And even if you go and implement it, every single stage, you have your bespoke project, solution, you name it. You are still looking at the process that is not designed to absorb 500%, 1,000% productivity gains. So, and this is a massive revelation that I've kind of stumbled upon when we were looking at the productivity gains. We were looking at very strong commercial use cases, but when you look at the P&L of the organization, it's actually materializing at a significantly lower rate. So then you start thinking, like, what is the future? And the reality is, and I think this is a really hard problem, and those of you who have entrepreneurial mindset, the world is your oyster, because a lot of these processes, they have to be reimagined. They have to be reimagined through the AI native mentality. And this is, I think this is a seismic shift that we're just starting to enter. And if we double click on MIT study of 95% of the AI adoption programs are failing, there is a lot of nuance in that study. So. And the vast majority is that you're either trying to apply it everywhere or you're applying to the wrong problem. And I would believe that pretty much all of you are familiar with the BCG study about Jagged Frontier that came out very quickly after ChatGPT got released, suggesting that if the model, there are problems that the models can solve very well, and there are problems that you're pushing and pushing, you're actually decreasing productivity instead of improving productivity. So you also need to understand what problem you want to try to solve and whether this is the right technology to solve this problem with. And I think these are the layers that a lot of the organizations are sometimes scheming over. And this is change management program, this is the roadmap problem. But then one thing that we don't talk enough about is the fear problem. Even if you take the superstar team of wizards that can reimagine your processes and deliver this solution for you, will people actually use it?
I would like to pick up on two things here. So one is just coming back to the measure of productivity, and said like, the productivity can increase 1,000 times. Does this translate into the business performance and is actually delivering a return on investment case for deploying any of the solutions?
So this is, yes, the answer depends on who who you're talking to, right? And how you define ROI. So firstly, your question is to how do you measure? And what I've seen working really well is speed to completion or speed to market. This is where you can have a very strong story behind it. And there are a lot of applications that can help businesses to move faster. That said, it's very hard to measure in the monetary terms. Things that are easy to measure are the number of people that are doing the job right now, right? Or the number of customers that you brought in. But how do you actually measure the value of all the process that is sitting in between? And as soon as you start going to the CFO's office, the conversation turns very black and white. Right. When you're talking to the owners of the process, you can have a very positive story. When you start talking pure financial numbers, it becomes much, much, much harder to justify.
And then the second thing that I think you mentioned was that, you know, a lot of that is basically organization subscribes to ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot and gives access to those tools to every single employee. And then the work is on a very individual level, but the organization wants to just drive the adoption. Do you think that, and I want to pick up on Vittorio, because you very much on the infrastructure side, do you think that that's the best way to drive adoption of AI and therefore benefits for organizations?
Do you mean employee first productivity or top down?
Do we think that everybody having access to ChatGPT is going to move the needle, or do we think that it has to be a bigger infrastructure investment to processes, to Olga's point?
Yeah, well, the problem with bottom-up automation, so giving employees access to, or actually pushing employees to find ways to automate, is that you need three things to go well with to get the right outputs right from LLMs. I mean, I think it's things that we've discovered 2 years ago already, that you need the right prompt, you need the right context for the LLM, and you need it to be plugged into the right systems to get the right, apart from the right input, which is in the context, but just do the automation, essentially drive the results. And if people act alone on that, they can be very good at doing the right prompt, but still you lack the context, you lack, you can give in documents that you would be using, but you still are not plugged in a lot of the other tools that you would need to do to get the job done. So that's the problem with that. And also there's always a fear factor. There's always an excitement factor and a curiosity factor. Just people are on a spectrum of what they enjoy doing and what not. And it's not obvious that everybody enjoys just trying out AI tools. It's I think we all know that in practice there's people who actively want to use AI and people who, in a sense, prefer to have it with more sort of ready-made use cases. So that's the limitations of it coming bottom up, but obviously you get more creativity because you don't get use cases that are mandated from top down and maybe lack a little bit of ground sort of knowledge of how the processes really work. They, as Olga was saying, they might be focused on numbers, but actually turning those financial numbers into implementation, actual sort of KPIs of that matter is very difficult. So obviously there is a trade-off in both of those.
I'm going to sort of change a little bit, because there are areas that productivity actually means a lot to overall progression or success of the organization. That's healthcare. Chiara, you had some good experience in terms of, sort of more medical. What sort of, is there an argument that we should be focusing on productivity gains in that area?
Yes, so in my previous experience, I was working in academia and I was working more on the safety side than the security. So we were working with the safety of AI. And one of the applications we built was one robot going in emergency and accident department of the hospital to do the initial triage. The reason why we developed this robot was because one doctor asked us to develop it because they didn't have the resources to do the triage to the people. The staff was not enough. So yeah, that's the point you made. There is a lot that AI can do in healthcare to, try to solve the problem that can be not enough stuff for people, or maybe improve diagnosis, improve treatment, specialized. So I think, yes, in healthcare there is an argument that we should employ AI more, but because I work in safety, we were working also making these things safe. And one of the things that is difficult in healthcare because of the regulation is that you need to sort of explain what the technology is doing, because this is what the regulation wants. So that is become a little bit of a blockage as well, because you will never use technology like deep neural network or LLM, where the explanation is very gray and you can really explain. So this is the blockage you have. You need to still stay in the explainable that limit your potential.
Yeah, and sort of what are the other blockers for current adoption? We're talking about this sort of bottom-up approach. We're talking about safety. A lot of the work that I've been doing for the last 2 years is trying to sell to businesses AI or AI tools, and a lot of them were like, well, we still don't have databases. The infrastructure is still not quite ready. How to move that sort of needle before we actually talk about the progression to anything else? Olga, did you want to give or Bhavul?
So I'm sorry, it's just it's so common this problem. Yeah, so the short answer is, for the organizations that want to be at the forefront, they kind of have to solve two really complex problems at the same time. They don't have a choice. I don't think so. Delaying the work around the database is, or building the pipelines, and then deciding that they're going to start experimenting and figuring out. I mean, with the speed of evolution and change and the type of companies that are appearing, the speed with which they appear into a reasonably mature level, it's something that we have never seen in the ecosystem before. So waiting is not an option. Then the second question then becomes is, if you can't put resources in both, how do you split your whatever 100K check, million check, 10 million check, right? And where do you allocate that resource? The reality is that with the current access, either if you have resources to build wrappers with APIs and you have appetite for that, you can actually solve quite a few problems without running into a problem of the databases. They are not going to be the most complex problems, but they will already move organization forward, and they will already give knowledge and the skill set to the organization that is very much required for significantly more advanced transformation. But I think the real true transformation will happen when those two unite. And we have people from advanced tech companies, and I would love to hear from you that all the data problems are solved on your side. But,
Come on, Titans!
I mean, I can touch up on this a bit. Also, kind of picking up from what Vittorio was mentioning earlier, that there's a lot of infra that hasn't been built to utilize what exists, the models that exist right now, in the best way and in a complete way. I think a lot of companies still have a lot of leeway to build or use the models that exist. At the same time, if you're talking about the database problem, right? If I was, let's say I'm trying to build a startup and I'm trying to help out NGOs, let's say, right? And NGOs are not, most of them are not keeping a database. They don't have a proper website. They don't track what goes in, what comes out in a proper way. And the next question from you would be, okay, is it an Excel sheet or is it something like that, which I can take a look and do? Because the models are, as they're getting more and more generalized, I think if I wear the founder's hat, I have to think about, okay, how do I solve this problem? Because this is the blocker right now, and you have to enable that. And a bunch of these problems, if it's getting tracked not in an Excel sheet, maybe in a register or in a notebook, you can still use AI there, right? So you can try to automate that bit first. So there is still a lot of stuff that could be done with not models of today, maybe models like 4 years ago that were present, right? So I think a lot comes down to what Olga was mentioning, fear, maybe, as well as not everyone's kind of, if things are working, there's always some resistance to changing in processes. So I think, and that should change. Otherwise, there can be newer competitors who will come in, who will be AI native, and they could just get ahead faster.
I think just to bring it in here as well, Julie Sweet, the CEO of Accenture, who have massive exposure to loads of businesses, have precisely the point is that businesses need to completely rethink their processes in order to really realize the value from the adoption. But what you were saying kind of reminded me a bit of that moment when the data lake. Remember that? Data lake was supposed to solve all our databases problems, and you can just shove all your shit into a bucket and everything's going to be fine. And guess what? We all still work with Postgres. Actually now with the sort of whether LLMs or maybe future of LLMs, do you think we are closer to the point where some of the infrastructure is no longer, the rigidity of the infrastructure is not going to be longer needed? Vittorio, do you?
I don't know if I have a good answer to this, to be honest. So if anybody wants to take it.
I don't have a good answer.
Bhavul, do you want to?
I'll ask a clarifying question. So are you kind of thinking, do we need lesser infra components as we go forward?
Do we need less databases? Do we need less DevOps? Do we need less infrastructure? Everything can be a bit low-level organization and actually live in spreadsheets spread across different places.
It might take us a while, is my prediction, to get there for the adoption to take over, but we could get there, right? Like in an ideal world, there are tools in places that we could use less databases than we do right now, or for that matter, replace databases with whatever technology, right? So, but at the same time, as we were mentioning, right, it's going to be harder to make that change in a global level across all companies, and there's some time that it's going to take for people to catch up, but it's possible.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of don't really see why talking about maybe startups specifically would use less of a database. Like, if anything, the advent of AI has democratized and has, let's say, removed a lot of the moats that companies had, but the one that didn't remove is data and like having a moat in terms of having the best data and having it well structured to solve that specific problem. And to do that, obviously, the best way to do it is have it centralized in a good database that is clean, that is well governed, it's secure. So I don't really see how it would lower the need for a database. Also, just from the stack of the technology, like information retrieval, in order to retrieve information, you want to index it. And in order to index it, you need to shove all the data pipeline that you have into an embedding model that you can then pull out and retrieve that data at runtime. So you still need to do all that work. Mm-hmm. So if you have it all in different spreadsheets, maybe you can have an automated way of doing it, but it just seems to add more complexity, and I don't think that's going away in any way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think what we established here, did you want to?
I'm just reflecting on the examples that I had to work with when it comes to data. And I agree that from infrastructure point of view, I don't see a seismic shift happening. But maybe, caveat, maybe. Maybe there is case to be made for less obsession with the quality of data. Because we do have this idea of the database and data tables will be usable and accessible only one, right? And then there are a million rules that they have to, or million boxes that have to be ticked for the data to be used. And the reality is nobody has the, like what, I think statistically 2% of all the organizations in the world can say that they're very close to those benchmarks. The rest of the organizations have to deal with reality. And what we learned through, so we've tried to address this problem through a couple of use cases. One was analytical use case, where you look at the type of questions that people ask, and analysts are spending a lot of time cleaning, retrieving. Basically, nobody enjoyed that work. The stakeholder is not happy because it takes forever and they want the answer right now. And the analyst is not happy because it's far away from being an exciting part of their job. Just checking that all the fields have been fully completed. And now what we did is we tried to solve it with Gen AI, and purely as an experiment. What we've learned is that very quickly, after, of course, a lot of feedback and information supplied to the model, we could see that it could actually understand that information is not perfect. And the queries were written very quickly. The first set of queries that the tool that the team built were not perfect, were retrieving wrong data. But then after several iterations, we could see that actually it's starting to understand that this is imperfect, and therefore this type of data should not be used to answer this question. What then we landed on collectively as a team is that but we can actually augment a fair chunk of work that nobody enjoys doing with writing super long queries simply because our database is out of date, right? Or they are not in the state they need to be in. And that worked reasonably well. I believe that with the advancement in AI overall, and the accuracy of the models and their abilities to tackle more complex code queries, this is going to become even more pronounced, and therefore maybe this mundane chunk of work, which is not necessarily a dev work, but more of analytical part of work or junior data science work, that can be augmented quite massively.
So I think we all agree that there is loads of good, positive impact that can be delivered through the tool set that's current. There's still some challenges, safety, there is the infrastructure, there is the organizational approach to process reinvention. So why would we want to go towards AGI? Why do we need it? Chiara, do you want to?
That's a good question. Why would we need it? Because, in my opinion, it can empower us. I mean, in my opinion, it shouldn't be a substitute of the human, but could empower us, could make some job, if you want, quicker, but it's really... It's like another revolution. Like, for example, when the computer came on, no one was considering the computer, and now everyone is using the computer. I see a little bit in the same way. It's a new, is a revolution that will happen, we like it or not. And somehow it's better to embrace. We need or we don't need? That's a good question. I'm not sure we need, but it's something that can help us if used in good way. But I was thinking about the question you asked me earlier about if AGI becomes smart, you will be able to break it or not. Maybe it would be possible to create other AGI to break the AGI. So in this case, it will become controversial. So, it's always, if we make a good use, I think it can empower humanity. But if we make a bad use, it could also be very bad.
Do you think that waiting for AGI is having a negative effect because we're not doing enough with what we've got?
I don't think we should wait. Yes, I mean, I think we should start to use what we got, and when the things improve, we'll improve using it, and eventually the job market, in my opinion, will change. Doesn't mean that everyone will lose the job. I'm not so negative, but means that probably your job will change. The way in which you do your job, so I imagine will be different. But we shouldn't wait. I don't agree we should wait. We should probably invest more in try to keep up with the regulation and the other stuff that needs to happen around this, so we are ready to use it, because if there are no regulation, like, for example, the UA Act, that recently come out, but it's still a draft, it's still not ready. So that's my fear, that maybe the technology go too fast, but the ecosystem doesn't evolve enough.
Okay, I'll come back to that inequality, but would like to hear Bhavul's sort of why AGI?
Why AGI? So that's a different question.
Coming back to that, yeah. So why would we ever want to go down that route?
I think I have a very similar optimistic opinion, in the sense that it can empower us in solving a bunch of challenging problems that otherwise would have taken us just centuries or maybe many, many decades. And we already kind of see that in some capacity. I think vaccine companies which try to utilize AI for data science purposes, for experiments, they are faster at kind of coming to what works, what doesn't work. People are able to do diagnosis better. So there is some utilization that you can do with the power of computation, because ultimately it's just computation, right? Instead of a human doing it, you have machines doing some of the computation for you. I don't believe that humans get replaced as such, but I feel like scientific discoveries, some of the biggest problems that we might have around medicine, healthcare, education for that matter, can be much more personalized, right? I think everyone has their own way of studying.
And how, well, again, what's your view? How, given what we were saying about adoption of the current state of the art, which is slow and has blockers and challenges, how the higher level of sophistication models are going to be adopted to deliver all this promise that, you mentioned?
I mean, I think of it sometimes in this way, right? Sorry for kind of following up with a question, but when there were no paintbrushes, our ancestors were still making some sort of art, right? Maybe through stones, maybe on concrete, but it's possible, right? So tools will keep developing. With newer models, sure, we'll have more capabilities. Maybe we'll require less work to make them work. But nothing stopping us from utilizing what we have today. And I think if somebody is trying to build some value, some businesses, you can always keep going today. You don't have to wait for what comes out tomorrow. If you are... The research, however, I'm still a big proponent for research to continue. Both on safety side, I think it's super important to be safe and secure when we are building technology that is that can both empower us but also confuse us sometimes. So, but at the same time, research should also continue on making these models better and smarter, right? Because they will empower more people in that sense.
Olga, do you have the sort of why answer? Why AGI? Why do we need it? Do we need it? Do we already have it?
I would argue that we already have it.
There you go. Tell us more.
I would argue that we already have it. We don't use it enough. And the anecdote that did strike me. I have a 3-year-old, and one day she comes to me. She's like, "Mommy, I have a question. I was like, what's your question, sweetie? Ask. And she was like, no, I don't want to ask you. You won't know the answer. I was like, who do you want to ask? Like, mommy, I want to talk to your phone. And because she saw me, I used the voice feature of, and I test all the voice features of all the models all the time. And I sometimes challenge and I have like a fairly long dialogue. And she clearly saw me somewhere and she comes to me, she's like, mommy, can you put it on? I put it on. She was like, so tell me, why do trees have trunks? And what do they use them for? And I was like, well, kudos to you for having such a complex question at the age of 3. But also, I just realized that for this generation and the younger generation, it is already here because this is the first time we can actually talk to a machine in the same way we talked to, I don't know, our friends. And yes, there are lots of caveats. Yes, there are a lot of challenges with regards to the type of answers we can get sometimes and how far we can push this technology. But the reality is it is able and capable of doing this already. If we look at the latest benchmarks, then benchmarks are improving when it comes to performance of the models across the board. The challenging questions, the challenging subjects that even 2 years ago, the researchers were saying will take, I don't know, 5 to 10 years to solve. Some of them have already been solved. So in a way, the version of AGI is already here. But if you look at the adoption, it's not quite there yet. And not quite there by a mile. If you start talking to large corporates and trying to understand whether they have already invested substantially and there is a sophisticated program of work, probably not. And interestingly, the scale-ups and startups are facing very similar challenges. So if there is something that I would love for the audience to observe is that genuinely the world is your oyster. Right now, there are no deep specialists in any of it in terms of application. Nobody genuinely knows. It's been only around for 2.5 years, right? People got their hands on that 2.5 to 3 years ago. So you can build a company around it, you can build a career around it, you can come up with a completely different ecosystem of tools around it. Just embrace it.
I'm going to give Vittorio a chance to say so.
Great answer, all three of you. So the question is twofold, right? One is, the first part is, should startups, entrepreneurs, etc., wait for AGI? It's not coming, it's not falling from the sky. So obviously the answer is, my answer is obviously not, because when you use today's technology to build an edge, I'm talking just like startups that I see in the space. When you build today's technology to use an edge, by building that edge and getting customers and getting data that helps you figure out what customers like, if tomorrow comes along and a bigger model destroys that, there will still be some steps that you've taken that will allow you to be a slightly better player than someone that starts from scratch. So I think waiting is never the right approach. And the second point instead is, should we be building AGI or should we not? And to that. So obviously, what scares me most. So my answer to that is safety before building it, because what scares me the most is the over-reliance that people are starting to have on models that we know are fallible. We know they can't do everything, and yet people, you ask them how they are, and they answer.
Can I just ask Chiara here, because we have the right titan here. Is it possible to ensure safety before building, to your point?
But safety by design, yes, is a topic. I mean, yes, I mean, safety needs to follow rules, so that is why it's important that also regulation keep it up. So we understand. And as I did the same example before, like the regulation of healthcare, for example, is whatever. It's very difficult to introduce a technology in healthcare. Whoever tried to do it should know. And you need to go through clinical trial, and you need to go through strict regulation. It's normal that it's like that. But at the moment, everything needs to be explainable. This means that it's very restrictive. So, yeah, safety can be done before in terms on what is safe. What we mean by safety needs to be defined by the top approach, and then, the standard needs to come from here, and then from there all the thing.
I completely agree with that, and I also think that there is no better way to learn than in practice, and it's difficult to I was just thinking now that it's interesting because we come at this problem from different points of view. One of the points of view that I come at from is as an avid reader of a lot of AI safety, and there's this book called Human Compatible by Stuart Russell that says that proposes a way in which you can have safety by design. So having AI that is forget the exact way that he puts it, but that tries to understand what is the human's desire and is initially unsure about it, so it doesn't make assumptions on it. Obviously, that is a great approach, but then in practice, how does it marry with the real world? So it needs to be incremental improvements, and it needs to be incrementally put in the world. It needs to be fine-tuned, but in order to what scares me there is if Bhavul before was saying that the ultimate objective is to get AI to do scientific research, and that means being able to achieve solutions to problems that we couldn't do ourselves. And I completely agree with that. I'm very optimistic as well. But what happens when the AI is really good at doing that? So it would be, and you want to have the AI work on the problems, in a sense, not really being hindered by what we understand. So we want researchers that are assisted by AI, but if AI really becomes very good at doing research, you will start relying a lot more on it. And at what point do you say, wait a sec, I don't actually understand fully, or at least 50% of the researchers don't really understand fully this design. Do we go ahead with the design, or do we take a step back and ensure that everybody understands it, to ensure that there is full explainability, or there is full human accountability of it? That is a trade-off that I don't think that we have an answer to, and we won't have an answer until we actually reach to that point, and just incrementally the research labs are about to sort of give hand a little bit more autonomy of decision making.
This is, great point. The incrementalism, the building, the safety, the regulation. It feels like there has to be the right set of incentives as well that driving the increments, and therefore the right organizations that are actually building and pushing that progress forward. The challenge here is that the capital and the organizations are not quite equally allocated. My favorite example from the UK government in terms of funding our frontier AI is that they are giving out grants worth of 50 to 120,000 pounds, which means that you can probably afford, a leg of a scientist. And that is for building AI frontier performance that delivers to the new world's capabilities. quite a big challenge for a leg of a scientist. So how do we deal with it? Like, where is the capital? Who should be building and funding that incremental and safe progress? Chiara, do you want to?
I think it should be more the politics side, because you can't ask today, to the big company to stop. It's not realistic. They will not be interested to the safety. They will continue to try to sell the technology. I remember when I was working in safety, we were talking about self-driving cars and the safety of self-driving cars, and the only interest of every automotive company was to invent to come out with the first self-driving cars. But it's obvious because they have the commercial interest. So I think it should be more politician, government sort of effort to try to regulate. There is a new technology, we need to regulate, we need to do something, because you can't expect company to do it. Some company do, like Anthropic is very keen on the safety, but you can't rely totally on this. That's my point. The regulation should be pushed by bodies, by the regulatory bodies, the government, in my opinion.
Olga, did you want to?
Yeah. I think to the question about capital and the example that you gave, it's a nice signal from the government. As you rightly pointed out, it doesn't...
I think nice is a nice word.
Yes, it's... that's not the grant that any of the companies that are doing serious research would even spend time trying to secure. So, but I see it as two-way. One is around the capital. I don't see any shortage of capital right now. I actually see so many companies getting funded. I think they're literally coming and asking to set up companies, people that they believe they can materialize their idea. So there is no shortage of capital. This is the first part. There's a shortage of ideas and problems that people defined clearly and want to solve. The second part is the government role. And I had a chance to speak to the government in the summer. And I genuinely believe that going back to the skills and the conversation around what the future holds for the workforce, I am trying to call on them as much as possible to drive that agenda. Because I think if we imagine like an alternative future or reality where all organizations have adopted the latest technologies and the workflows are now fully AI, agentic, etc. What are the skills and what are the roles? Do we believe that people are not employed? I personally do not believe that. So I do see massive augmentation of skills, but very few people and very few organizations are seriously thinking about it. So therefore, I do think that for the government to take an active role or at least be the voice would be an incredibly powerful move. But also, I do believe that leadership in the organizations also has to bear some responsibility around it and have the programs designed in such a way that people have an opportunity to understand how their skills are transitioning and getting augmented and what they need to learn. And there needs to be some sort of reset. This is not researched enough. Research institutions don't have answers to it. Whether it's AI research institution or academic research institution. When I look at the latest papers, because even the paper that we've just released is going to take 2 years to get peer-reviewed. In 2 years' time, what is the generation of the models that we're going to have, right? So the speed, the process are not, they are not moving in the same direction. And the numbers that academia is then comfortable quoting and people are comfortable talking about, they're already outdated by several generations of the technology.
One sentence, do you want
to? One sentence.
Who should pay for this? Who should pay for all this?
So the pay is always private capital, but I think the question is not who should pay for it. It's who should regulate it, right? Who should stop it in a sense. And I think it would be naive to not see that there are obviously race conditions in building these models, sort of, you know, between the US and China, and any effort to stop it needs to be bilateral, and it's very difficult. Chiara said it before that companies wouldn't agree to it. It's the typical, game theory of if I stop, what is the other person going to do? Game theory on a very, very huge scale. Very huge scale, yes. And yeah. we've had one very positive example where that was successful, with nuclear treaties, yeah. And the disarmament. But it's not obvious that we are able to do this with AI. So I think it's very important to be asking these questions, yeah. very early on, yeah. and now. Perfect. Well, we've asked a lot of questions and heard a lot of answers. Thank you very much so far for the panelists. I'd like to hand over to some questions from the audience. We probably have time for about 2 or 3 questions. If you can say your name, question, and who the question is directed to, that'd be great. I think I don't know what am I doing. Hello. Yes. I think the gentleman in the green had raised the...
I love that colour. It's got you noticed.
What's first then?
Hi. Thanks very much. It's been really interesting. I guess my question is probably for Bhavul, as a research engineer at one of the frontier labs. What's your sense in terms of the rate of capability change now? So, is it increasing linearly? Is it going up exponentially? And I guess the context of the question is, ChatGPT-5 was released. There was, I think, a public maybe wrongly thought that, okay, we're saturating the abilities of, chatbots, essentially. But there's a sense that they're sort of focusing on coding. AI 27, which is this risk paper, says, well, if they can algorithmically self-improve, then you get runaway dynamics. So I just wanted to get your sense of, in terms of capabilities, what's the rate of change now, as you see it?
My opinion on this, and in my own opinion, based on what I'm seeing across the industry, is the rate has not been linear for a while. So it's been exponential for some time. I think everyone can see this because if you were trying to read up and catch up on AI, it's impossible to do that right now, right? Every day there'll be 10 new things that would come out. So if you were just not working anywhere and just reading up everything, even then it'll be hard to catch up. So in that sense, I believe it's exponential, right? So we already make a choice of what we are reading, what we are not, and what we are digesting or what we are not. And that's gonna stay that way, right? That's my sense. That the rate of change is not linear. It also cannot be linear when you have a bunch of companies and a bunch of groups working on something, and if somebody comes out with something, then other groups suddenly start building on top of that. So it's gonna be hard to keep it linear.
I'm gonna go to the other side in case there's a question.
Yes, I think there was somebody in the blue. There's a girl in the not blue, white.
Yes, good choice.
I just got my colors.
I'm glad I wore this color today. I wanted to get your take on sovereign AI. So for smaller countries with a bigger degree of cultural divergence from the US or China, the models are a bit less relevant for their local populations. A lot of the cultural norms do not come across. So what's in it for the smaller countries? How do they invest in sovereign AI? Should they invest in sovereign AI? Or is it up to the private market to actually care about these countries as well? Thank you.
Who should answer that question?
Do you have a preference? Anybody? It's open to the floor, Magda.
I can take a stab. Can you define maybe a little bit better what you say when you mean sovereign AI? Do you mean purely localized to the cultural norms? Do you mean I maybe understand something different when I hear sovereign AI?
Yeah, so a couple of different definitions you can pick whichever you prefer, like whether it's localized to the cultural norms, the way you train your models, or the fact that infrastructure is local to you, being run by the country rather than by a private company?
Well, I would think that the best way to build an opportunity there is if the problem is large enough and like private capital works on it. In terms of the ethics of having an AI that is localized to a particular country. So I work in the international division of AGI information. So it's the problem that I see. We try to localize to the different countries. Some are much bigger, some are much smaller. We obviously need to prioritize the bigger ones because it's the absolute number of customers that in the end matters. I will say though, I think there is always an opportunity for small startups to go after a market that is not huge and is not completely blue ocean, but it's niche and it doesn't have many competitors. I think it's actually a great space for a startup to be in, especially in the most competitive industry that we've ever seen in the world, where wherever a market is, $1 trillion market, there are thousands of competitors overnight that develop a startup on it. When it's a niche market and smaller, and where the barrier to entry is higher because having culture, knowing what is required for that country to have a quality, to be above the quality bar, only someone from that country can know it. I see that as a great opportunity for a startup that maybe isn't trying to go after a $1 trillion market, but is. So I would think I don't see anybody building towards that if it's not private capital.
We're going to have time for one more question.
Yes,
I think there is a gentleman, the back was raised the
Which one? Where am I
hand
going?
first. Here, yes. Yeah. The one that...
I love that.
Yes, that suit and tie. Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you very much. So I believe that you didn't touch a very important topic here, which is, Chiara touched at a certain moment saying that there are some regulation within the NHS and they have to face and build up everything according to those regulations. But the main problem now I'm seeing with the AI is completely out of control. Looking at from the point of view of ISO regulation, meaning ISO 9000 is saying about traceability. None of the models right now, they are having a full traceability of what they are doing. And going further, talking about the bottom-up or up to bottom implementation, what if a certain employee discover a very good way to build up, to improve a certain process, but it is losing all the steps which went the steps to get that achievement. Yes, so there is no traceability anywhere in any of the models.
What's your question?
So, what are you doing? What are the big companies? What should be done? What should be done on this direction?
Thank you very much.
I've got a very specific challenge here as well because we have to end at 1:45. So someone has got
2 minutes.
2 minutes to answer this question.
I can answer in 2 minutes.
Yeah, go.
Done.
So that is absolutely right. I understand the problem. The problem is that, it's impossible to understand what they do, and this is the problem of the regulation. So I think the challenge and why the regulations are not ready yet is exactly this, that they are not, they don't know how to overcome this challenge. So it's either we find a way to make this model more explainable, or the regulation needs to be more relaxed. I don't see another way, and this is exactly the challenge we are doing now.
Excellent. Solved. And it's 7:45. Thank you very much for everybody in the audience. Thank you, the panelists. A round of applause for the panelists. And thank you, David and the team.
Perfect.